Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast, joined at the moment by Penguin Pete Turbovich in beautiful Iowa, um,
Sweaty, humid Iowa.
sweaty, humid Iowa.
Yeah.
And later today, we will be joined by our intrepid correspondent, Giles Edwards, in Montreal at the Fantasia Film Festival. And also, Giles has roped in a special guest whose name we do not know how to pronounce. But we will by the end of by the beginning of the next segment, we'll know how to pronounce it. His name is Jacob, and I'm guessing it's Jakob Skrzypa,
That might be close.
something like that. His name is Skrzzypa. So, Pete, how are you?
Oh, I'm very how and looking forward to what Fantastic Fest items Giles will find for us.
All right. Well,
And
it's the middle of the summer and not much is going on the weird movie front. Um, and we don't have much to report on. So we're going to do possibly a very quick session, uh, introductory session before we join our guests from Fantasia Fest. We're not interested, I don't know, I'm not interested in Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe Pete is, but it's not
yeah,
for me. Um, and I don't know what else is out there. Um, but we do have one thing that's in theaters, a few theaters. I think it's just in New York City this week. It's coming off of Cannes, where it played in a certain regard, which is out of competition, but sometimes is where they stick the more experimental or offbeat or audacious movies. We are hoping that's why this one was playing there. For those who are not on YouTube and can't see us, Pete, would you care to explain
yeah.
what we're looking at?
This appears to be the protagonist of the film, as I recognized from the trailer when I saw it, and he's working what looks like a slide projector. We can't see what he's showing, but we're seeing we're seeing him in the dead on point of view. Young man in a room full of equipment, and this is one of our two movies.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah. There's really
which
not
would
much to go. It's a guy looking at a
yeah.
slide in a projector. Didn't I went to the official site? They didn't have a ton of really great stills for us to pick from. So that was what we picked. So this story is set in 1990s China. It's a Chinese movie, and it's a detective mystery about a Chinese policeman investigating a murder. And although there's not all that much information I can find out about the plot, there are several people suggest he's also at the same time maybe going a little bit mad, which is why it got on our radar. Pete, what did you think of the trailer or what?
It looks very sedate and it has a whole lot of waterside scenes. I remember, like he's at a pond or a lake or something. So could be the location of a clue of the mystery, but didn't really seem too wild at all, to tell you the truth. I don't know if this is something that's really got a lot of promise to it, but it could have a couple of weird wrinkles, and it is always interesting to see like Asian interpretations of staples that have traditionally been more of a Western genre. For instance, detective police procedural. It's very interesting seeing Asian filmmakers tackle that genre, and sometimes they come back to us with some very original thinking put into this old frame template.
Sure. And Chinese film right now still really doesn't have I'll probably get in trouble for saying this by somebody who's expert on Chinese film, but I would say it doesn't have much of an identity like some other national films do because there hasn't been a big Chinese film industry for a long time. Under communism, of course, there wasn't, it's just propaganda films. And since they've opened up, there are two types of Chinese films, which are, big blockbusters, which attempt to ape Hollywood movies, but usually don't do it with as much of a budget for special effects and usually don't have a big crossover appeal for Western audiences. And then there's their art house films, which the of everything I've seen has tended towards the very slow paced and maybe enigmatic. Um, it's Guy Ban is perhaps the best example of that. But yeah, it tends towards the slow-paced art house, and that's what I would expect to see here. I do have some quotes. Let's see, some quotes from Rotten Tomatoes pulled up. Nicholas Medina from Fapresky, which is an awards-granting organization, says it brought noir to theaters with the story of a detective obsessed with a murder that drives him to madness, while the movie reflects on the idea of storytelling itself. Another one, Alexa Dalby of Dog and Wolf, calls it tantalizingly ambiguous. Ben Rolfe of Awards Watch calls it mysterious and engrossing, and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of times people use words like enigmatic, which make us think, well, maybe there's something weird here. Here's one. Clarence Sweeve from South China Morning Post says that it offers a mix of dead-end detective work, doomed characters, and surreal dreamscapes. So it's those surreal dreamscapes that
Aha.
we're getting in on.
Yeah.
Um, then another one, uh, Screen International, says structurally inventive, if not downright format twisting. It takes a Jacob's ladder to 1990s China, and I'm wondering if that Jacob's ladder is a meant to be a hint as to what the twist perhaps is.
Yeah.
It might
That's
not
pretty
be,
shoes to fill there.
might be, might not be. We don't know. At any rate, it's probably not at a theater near you unless you're in New York City. And but it will come to some other art house theaters before going to VOD. We would assume very soon, and we might have a chance to check it out then. And this is the other thing: only one physical media release this week, and
Hmm.
it's a deep cut, I would guess. Again, Pete, for people who can't see what they're looking at, do you have a?
Oh, we have I guess, a kind of collage of scenes in like a movie poster, but this is Nosferatu with a drawn sketch of the character himself. They made this guy look in the sketch a little more rat-like, and there is a shuffle of rats running across the floor between his legs as he's stepping. Looks like he's emerging from a coffin, perhaps. And the dude has some rat-like teeth there and kind of rat-like features to his face, doesn't he?
Yeah,
So that might be an interesting take.
and the
As opposed to the original design of the Nosferatu vampire, as I understand it, was supposed to be like that of a blood-sucking insect, like a tick.
hmm.
Comparing him to just being a simple parasite without much human intelligence left, I guess. And Vampires also tie into our proposed guest today, too.
Yes, which we'll get to later.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
regarding this cover, I'm not sure if it's the actual cover or just like a promotional thing they've put out, but it's interesting that they've chosen to illustrate Nosferatu with sketches instead of with stills from the movie. I do
Oh.
not know what drives that decision, but it's interesting, I guess. It's from, it's being released by realclassicdvd.com, but it's
Mhm.
on Blu-ray. And I don't know, Pete, did you do any research on this release?
Not on this particular one, no.
Where,
I do see where it says Terror of Dracula,
yes,
Nosferatu and Terror of Dracula. Is this like a combination of the two movies, or?
sort of. That's where I had to do the research. Um,
Ah, okay.
so it's Nosferatu. This is Nosferatu, and they're advertising that it is the Essex Films version, which I think the only thing about the Essex Films version that's notable is that they did their own subtitles and they call the character Dracula instead of Orlok. So they
Oh,
went, I think that's the only real difference that I
hmm.
could detect anyway. Uh, but they're advertising this as the Essex film version that restores the characters' original names. Then on to it's Terror of the Vampire, right? Is that what they call it? What is it?
I'm
Terror of
seeing
Dracula.
Yeah, Terror of
All right.
Dracula.
So Terror of Dracula is as if you follow the links and go down the rabbit hole of realdvd.com, he explains that in the old days when he was a kid, you could buy movies. Nobody had VCRs, but you had film projectors and you could buy movies by mail order, and they would be, one or two reelers on 8 mm, and they would be uh, cuts of uh, other movies, often cut down. So, Terror of Dracula is, in the end, a 30-minute edit of Nosferatu. Um,
Hmm.
that was
Okay.
released as Terror of Dracula and sold on 8 mm film. So that's a novelty for anybody who wants to see that. No idea what the quality on these are going to be. They're probably not going to be restored. Um, a lot of people have probably seen a good restored version of Nosferatu. Not sure if people are going to be super interested in this, but some people may be. One thing is there's, of course, new scores for the film, which I am always interested in new scores for silent movies. I own a
Oh,
number of alternate scores for different movies. No, I got a lot of different Nosferatus, a lot of different Metropolises, and so forth. So that's something I'm particularly into. I don't know if that means I'm going to buy this version of Nosferatu or not, but I mean it's
yeah,
a
that's fair.
reason. It's something to. But other than that, there was nothing weird being sold on the market this week. So.
Oh, the definition of a slow news day, but thank heavens for Fantasia.
Yeah. Well, as I say, we will be joining Fantasia a bit later. So Pete had put out a video that
Oh,
has done very well, which is just it's like the simpler you make the video, the better it does on YouTube. You did one just compiling scenes from Brazil, 10 weird scenes from
yep.
Brazil, and it has
10
been
weird scenes.
quite a hit with fans.
Oh, okay.
That series could continue. However, I don't want to promise anything because of another piece of YouTube news we had. That Brazil video was a replacement for another video that Pete put up that got a copyright claim against it, even though it was clearly a movie review, just the same as all the other ones that Pete has put up are. It was from a larger company. We won't spoil what that movie is since you may never see it, but you may. I mean, I'll find. I'll if YouTube post it, we'll maybe host it somewhere else or host it ourselves so people can see it because Pete, of course,
or
went through.
maybe I could recut it too. It's not impossible. So
You could do. I don't know if that would help, but
huh.
we could also, we appealed it and we could also win the appeal.
Yeah. So,
We won't
but
do
here and out, we'll try to stick to perhaps smaller production companies and movies that would be absolutely thrilled with the exposure if we reviewed them, because we have plenty of obscure stuff left to go here.
Yeah. That's the thing about obscure stuff.
One that's been hovering around the bottom of the reader request queue that I've been looking forward to, but I almost don't know exactly how to approach it, is Demon Seed, 1977. And that's because with modern day AI in the news so much and reshaping so much of the industrial landscape, I'm now returning to just about any movie with a theme of computers running amok and taking over the world as even though this one is not quite in that same vein. But anyway, that's one I may look at.
Okay.
We do have a little bit of maybe interesting news, if I may.
Sure.
For weird movie fans, for one thing, the Toxic Avenger got remade.
Yes.
And it got remade no less with Peter Dinklage of Game of Thrones fame. And the news has now come out that they can't find a distributor because the movie is deemed unreleasable. So they don't know what's going to happen. And as the article on Variety, or rather, okay. Bounding into comics, it says here. Okay, well, it's also on Variety. Anyway, as the article says, they may be able to cut it. You may see a drop of this on Tubi someday, like in a few years. So, and it was at Fantastic Fest in 2023. Have we looked at that one yet?
We have not seen it. We've mentioned it, and I've been waiting for it. Well, I haven't been exactly on tenterhooks waiting for it, but I'm aware that it exists. And
yeah.
if it popped up in my feed that they were releasing it, we were definitely going to mention it.
Anyway, well, the news is that it's not being released because they just can't find a distributor. So maybe if there is a distributor out there who's desperate enough, the original one is available, in fact, on Tubi, and it's a trauma classic, of course, and it's I believe it's on their Full Moon Features label or section. Anyway, so that's the news. If you're waiting on Toxic Avenger, you're going to be waiting a little bit longer.
So I thought you were going to mention the other piece of news, which is more just trivia. There a bit of trivia dropped on Variety just recently, which is Laura Dern was on a podcast, and she have you heard this one, Pete?
No, I haven't. However, Laura Dern certainly ties into another story I'm looking at. Laura Dern having played, of course, in quite a few David Lynch movies and more than familiar to our steady weird movie fans.
Yeah, well, on the podcast appearance, she dropped the nugget that she was signed up to UCLA Film School as an incoming freshman and was cast in Blue Velvet. She got the audition and got the role, and asked her professors if she could, take a sabbatical and stay enrolled so she could go and shoot the movie. And they told her no. And one of the advisors she talked to had read the script, and he said, also, don't do this movie. It will, or, you would be insane to do this movie for your career. And she says, and now in the film school, they teach it. So you have to cover it. It's part of the core curriculum, and you have to cover it. she was kicked out of school for taking the role. So,
Wow. Ah, the irony.
and
Okay. Well,
I won't mention the podcast because I don't remember the name, but they're a podcast, some podcast that has like 100,000 times as many views as we do, so they don't really need the publicity. So,
oh, okay.
what
Well, they
else
should
did
be
you have,
this
Pete?
then. Well, speaking of actors who have worked for David Lynch, there is Kyle MacLachlan, who was in a new A24 horror film that's just being unveiled, and the film is called Alter. And this is from Russian director Igor Abrahamenko, and producer Chernin Entertainment. So it's Kyle MacLachlan is in this, along with January Jones, David Krumholtz, Lily Kalilas, and Hudson Bailing, I believe. Anyway, Kyle MacLachlan, having been, of course, familiar to our readers from the same movie, Blue Velvet, and as well as other features. I figure anything with Kyle MacLachlan is at least remarkable enough to remark on and say, okay, I'll check it out, just because I don't know if Kyle MacLachlan is even capable of appearing in a normal movie. I don't think he signs up for those.
I
Oh, there's that.
other than David Lynch movies, the only movie I can think of he appears in is Showgirls. So
Oh, ow. I forgot about that. I think I must have seen that, but I blanked it from my memory.
that is definitely a weird role to take.
Yeah, that was. I think I do remember seeing it just for that and saying, what? um, Also, Judd Apatow is going to be, one last bit of news here. Judd Apatow at HBO is going to be making a Mel Brooks documentary. I've been hearing about this for a while. Do we have any Mel Brooks movies on our weird movie list?
No, no,
No? Not even the producers made it?
nah. More of a cult
Ah, yeah. Yeah, true.
than a weird movie. Um,
Oh,
well,
well.
that reminds there is a another something that comes to mind. And I hadn't paid much attention to this, but there is a Time Bandits TV series that's been.
Oh, yeah. I think I heard about that.
Haven't checked it out. I don't think it has dwarves in it, or dwarfs in it. So I was like, you can't get rid of the dwarfs. I mean,
Yeah, Terry Gilliam likes his dwarfs. He even has them in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
but I'm so it's on some streaming service like Apple TV or something that I don't uh,
Hmm.
subscribe to, and so unless I hear really good things about how weird it is, and not just that people like it, I'm probably not going to put it on my personal coverage radar. Although if somebody else wants to cover it, they're more than welcome for the site. Do you have anything else, Pete, or should we just?
No, it looks like that's our cupboard is bare.
Yep. All right. Well, we are going to sign off and then sign back in just a little bit. No time at all will pass for you, and we'll be back with Giles Edwards and Jason. We're saying Skrzypa right now, but he'll tell us how to pronounce it. Jakob Skrzypa when we return. All right. See you in just a
Yep.
minute. Well, hello. We are back. Pete is still here. Giles Edwards has joined us in my lower left-hand corner, and directly below me is Jake Skrzypa. So I guessed his pronunciation of his name incorrectly. Skrzypa is correct. He is a comedy and genre writer and director who has a new feature movie out very soon called Vampire Zombies ... from space exclamation point. And he's also a reality TV producer of a show which I gather is fairly popular, although I don't watch reality TV, but maybe he can tell us about that. But I guess what we're most interested in is Vampire Zombies ... from space. So Jake, can you tell us what the status is on that and when it's debuting and everything?
First of all, thanks for having me be here with you guys.
Sure.
The project is going to be having its festival run later this year. We're targeting a lot of bigger genre festivals, although we have no official, nothing confirmed yet. But it's a super fun, goofy comedy that satirizes 1950s horror and sci-fi. So the films of Ed Wood, something you might have seen at a drive-in in the 50s. Very fun, very campy, just a good time. Looking forward to sharing it with people because I've been editing year and feel pretty dead to me right now. So I'm excited to see it with an audience and get that excitement. It's one you definitely want to see with a crowd.
Okay. You had a short that played at the festival that you are at right now earlier last year. I don't know if Giles ended up seeing it. What was that short? Whoops.
Uh, and we had that here last.
You're cutting out.
Played Toronto.
I just
Sorry,
wondering,
go ahead.
you're cutting out for me, or I might be cutting out for you.
Oh, okay. Am I good now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes. So we had a short called Your Money's No Good here that played at Fantasia last year. That was its world premiere, and we've since played at Toronto After Dark, Calgary Underground Film Festival, and a couple of other festivals in Canada. And yeah, that one was more of a comedy, dark comedy, in the vein of the Netflix series I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. So that one was a lot of fun to make. We shot it over like 2 days because I was leaving the country and we wanted to just make something. It was actually a result of our feature because the feature took so long and I come from the world of kind of run and gun, quick indie stuff. And we decided, oh, let's film something just quick and fun and dirty. And yeah, it's been a great ride. Met Giles here last year.
Giles, did you see his film? And
Oh, yeah, I walked the 27 miles from my hotel to the venue where it was hosted. It was a different part of town, and I'm sure there's a metro somewhere, but I was feeling ambitious. It was part of a larger, longer cabaret style experience with, I remember a whole lot of French and Jake's movie and a couple other things in English over the course of was that like 3 hours or so, I want to say?
Oh yeah, it was crazy because it was so I think we're that building, it's like just our thing, 3 hour plus block, 90% in French, and I don't speak very well. So even for me, it was just kind of like, yeah, that's great, cool. Uh, yeah, so it was super nice of Giles to come and check it out and endure all the francophone films to get to ours.
all right. Well, we
And
do
we
have
were there the whole festival pretty much. So yeah, we were in line together all the time. So
we do
that
have
brings us here.
spotty Wi-Fi, it sounds like, on Jake's end because he's a little cutting in and out, but we're getting most of it. So we might ask you to repeat something.
Sure, I can try to turn on my hotspot too. That might be better. Maybe
Yeah, that might help.
give me a sec here.
Sure. Other things by Jacob include number of shorts I'm seeing on your site, sketch comedy and shorts. I was just watching Airbnb right before we came on. Interesting premise. Creepy old guy leaving a couple to their Airbnb type accommodation, only to go to the potato cellar and start watching them on monitors. Interesting situation. Also, you've done some reality TV work for both Survivor, I believe, and Big Brother Canada, was it?
Okay, I'm on the hotspot now. Sorry, I cut out for a sec, but the internet should be better for the rest of this. Can you repeat what you said? Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. You also did producing on the crew of Survivor and Big Brother Canada as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
It says, and I was just reading off some of your other items on your resume here: the sketch comedies and shorts, and for Funny or Die, and and let's see here. Oh, different selected sketches you have here. So we've got one about playing a Ouija is dangerous with a devil character. I'm just looking it out on your site. I'm not playing it, of course, because I shouldn't watch things while we're podcasting. But anyway, interesting resume there.
Yeah, it's been a fun few years. I'm just always trying to make stuff and work with new people, and yeah, I love
Yeah.
making things. So
That's where the true weird stuff comes in, is when you get that cut and run pace where you can't stand to look at a project too long. You get tired of it. You just want to move on to the next thing, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, I can totally identify with that mentality.
Let's see. So personally, let me ask you, so you've done some producing for reality TV shows, and you're now, is that actually producing actually for you a way to get into directing, or did you go from directing into producing and back? Do you plan to do them both at the same time?
So reality has largely just been the thing that pays the bills, because making, artistic things or things that I care about or, want to make, there's no money in that, at least for me at this stage in my life. I'm just trying to make things that are cool and interesting. But reality, now more than ever, especially with AI and everything, studios are backing and funding more and more and more AI. So I've been very fortunate, sorry, more reality work, not AI. I've been very fortunate to work on this show called The Challenge. And the big draw of that is it's a great crew. Every season we do in a different country, so I get to travel around the world. And I get to produce really fun games that are very like stunt based and very big budget games actually. So it's similar to producing to what I might be doing on a feature in terms of, maybe we were using helicopters and pyro and this and that. So it's a great skill building job. It's a great financial job, and it lets me see the world and meet new people. So it's kind of, I call it my side hustle, even though it's the thing that is actually funding my life and letting me come
Yeah.
to festivals and make my own movies.
There
Um,
you
but
go.
actually, but actually this year I turned 30 recently, and I decided I'm gonna not do any more reality for like the next 5 years and just try and make my own stuff and be a starving artist for a little while. So we'll see how that goes. If you see me on the side of the street, throw me a quarter.
We'll throw you an American quarter, no less.
Perfect. 50
That much
here
further.
almost. Yeah.
As a reality, though, as a reality producer, you always have the possibility that you might meet the next president of the United States. So,
Yeah.
and get some compromising material.
It's very true.
Wow, that didn't go over well. Um,
I can assure you, Canadians I've found here are very interested in U.S. politics. When I've come here, I came here for a film festival. I didn't know U.S. politics back at home.
And the story of American politics is weirder than anything going on in the
Yeah, oh
movie.
yeah, someone recently
Oh yeah,
complimented the show
I dig it.
writers for this summer
I
season.
swear we're trying to get the clown show under control. We're trying our best here, but
all right, so I guess one last question, Jake. Are you at Fantasia just for fun? Are you there doing some kind of undercover work and networking and looking for distributors or something?
Well, it's always a bit of both. I came, I've been so deep into the movie as we're wrapping it up that I came more so for a little bit of a mental break, just watch some movies and stuff. But, of course, when you're here, there's tons of people here from all around the world, different production companies, et cetera. So, yeah, you're always talking to people and talking about your projects and trying to meet new people. And so it's a bit of both. I came for leisure and stayed for the networking, let's say.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I guess we can come back with a question for you at the end, but I will mention your website is Jacob Makes Movies, Jacob spelled with a K, correct? So jacobmakesmovies.com. We will link that, but if anybody wants to just type that into their browser or phone and go there right now, you're welcome to. But let's ask. Well, we'll start with Giles since Jacob's talked for a while, and just ask, what is the best movie you've seen at Fantasia so far, and what is the weirdest? They could be the
Okay.
same, maybe not.
I will answer the weirdest one first, and they are not the same answer. The weirdest thing I've seen here is so far is Animalia Paradoxa. That is the only two movies came to mind as I was watching it. One of them was Begotten, and the other was, I believe, Poseidon Hotel from the art direction point of view. And of those two, I'm going to guess Begotten is more famous in that it has a certain, cachet among the uber chic of the, film, obtuse film study world, and, whatever really cool, trendy people saw, like maybe its only screening, I'm guessing, back in, I think, 89 or 91. But that kind of feel, there is some spoken word stuff in Animalia Paradoxa, but it has a really just, it has its own kind of look, and it doesn't look quite right. It doesn't look false, but it's very much doing its own thing visually, especially with how the character exists, the debris converted into displays. It's definitely very weird. And I'm very glad to see it. While simultaneously, there's virtually no one I can who would say, "Hey, you know what movie you really got to see?" That's a very limited crowd for that one.
That's
Um,
me.
and it's, yeah, so yes, you three, yeah, I'm guessing take some time to check it out. Certainly you, Greg, since you got to, potentially approve it for inclusion, but I doubt you'll question my nomination there. As for the best, well, my favorite, I think, like that I just as soon like sit down and watch again now, might be Ghost Cat Anzu. That was just so strange, fun, and adorable, and a great, Studio Ghibli breezy animation look that was very beautiful to behold, while simultaneously had a very slacker kind of, Kevin Smith, Coen Brothers comedy thing about the actual characters.
All right. So Jacob, did you see either of those two?
Those two I did not.
So what would your choice for the best and the weirdest one you've seen be?
I'll start with best because that I think I got for sure. So there's one called Scared Shitless, which from the title you might think it's going to be very lowbrow and low-hanging fruit, and it's surprisingly not. I suppose when you start at the ground level, there's nowhere to go but up. But it was a fantastic film. It's Stephen Ogg, who is maybe best known for Grand Theft Auto. He's the character Trevor. But he's in The Walking Dead. He's in Better Call Saul. Fantastic actor, and I'd never seen him in a lead role. And he's in another film here called Dark Match as well. So it's him and his son play like a father-son janitor duo, and the son is like a germaphobe. And they go to this apartment building where there's a clogged toilet, and it becomes a creature feature movie where there's this creature crawling through the pipes. It is oddly sweet. It holds your attention. It's fast paced, energetic. The creature design is awesome. Steve Kostanski, who made Psycho Gorman, and he's here with another film called Frankie Frico. He did all the creature effects for it. Yeah, just through and through, I enjoyed it. And as Giles put it, like I would sit down and watch that movie again right now. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and the audience loved it. Great crowd reactions. It was a fun one to see with the crowd as well. So I would say that was the best that I've seen so far, and right up my alley, surely being a horror comedy.
Mhm. Okay, and the weirdest one you've seen?
The weirdest one, I would say, was a film called The Chainsaws Were Singing.
Oh,
Which I'll give you the premise I read, which sums up how weird it is. It is an Estonian chainsaw murder musical. So yeah, it's certainly the weirdest. These guys they filmed it for like $5,000 over the course of 12 years in Estonia, and then painstakingly added digital effects to make it look like 70s, like kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, how the colors would bleed and it looks like very filmic. It's bizarre. I don't think everything translates. It's really funny at times. It's very weird at times. The jokes range from like clever and really good to like bottom of the barrel, like not good. And yeah, it's a little long. Like there's a weird, suddenly there's a scene where there's like a tribal scene that goes on for like 20 minutes that doesn't quite fit with the rest of the movie. So it's weird in all kinds of ways, but definitely worth a watch for I think your audience would
Oh
probably
yeah,
get out of it.
yeah.
Well, Giles has actually started his review of the chainsaws were singing, but not. I don't believe you finished it unless you got it in just before we got it.
No, I tidied up the omnibus thing, so I'll probably be writing it shortly after we,
But
wrap
chip
up.
in with your thoughts for on.
Oh yeah, I actually I saw that I was at the same screening as Jacob was, and it was, full packed house. Everyone was having a great time, and my big fear before I watched it was that, oh man, this is about 2 hours, and as you heard from the description that Jacob gave from the Fantasia source material, is like that string of words should say 85 minutes, after it. It's that kind of thing, and so that was my only concern, and it was great in the introduction for the movie. The director kind of pre-apologized for it. He went up, thanked the presenter, thanked Fantasia for having him, thanked us for being here, and then went on to explain that there were some, there was some might say it's too long. It is too long. There are good parts, there are bad parts. Some of the jokes work, some of them don't. We want you to cheer when you're excited. We want you to say boo if something sucks. So it was like kind of like knocked out. I was like, okay, all right, he knows this. We all know, we know he knows. So it, wasn't an issue. And even though it was 2 hours, and even though it was too long, and certainly that wood scene that Jacob described could be excised entirely without compromising the narrative flow, I was never annoyed to be sitting there watching it. It was, a useless addition, say, but it was amusing enough. There were, any dead point was immediately followed by a lively point, both in that scene and over the picture in question. And I chatted with the filmmaker, and I think they may be related. They might just be old buddies, but one of the guys who shows up in the movie as like a 12-year-old, he's, in his early 20s now. Because yeah, they shot it actually kind of quickly back in 2013, and the 10 years since has been post-production with the director kind of as a one man doing everything, learning how to do musical orchestration, learning how to do VFX, perfecting audio. So the actual film was, yeah, other than like an opening bit with a 4-person chainsaw massacre, was all 2013. And so the guy who plays the kid in the movie also shows up as an adult in that massacre. So he appears in the same film as a 21-year-old and as a 12-year-old kind of thing. But yeah, that was definitely a weird movie, and will be pretty easy to write up. I interviewed the guys and actually was at the bar with them for 90 minutes a couple nights ago. So just a lot of fun, and heavily influenced by Cannibal the Musical and other South Park style comedies.
How's the
That
music?
was my first thought seeing the screenshot was Cannibal the Musical. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and speaking of Cannibal, I think and I'll take this with a grain of salt because I also tend to be harsher on comedies because it's my own wheelhouse. But when he mentioned Cannibal, because he mentioned that in the screening that Cannibal was a big influence. You definitely get that like from the first song. You totally get that was their inspiration. And I would argue that it was almost to the detriment of the film because instead of trying to be something wholly original and own what they are, it felt very much like they were consciously trying to be Cannibal the Musical. There's certainly an element of that, at least in my 2 cents. But again, I also am much harder on because I made some notes about all the films I've seen, and I'm realizing as I'm looking at them, the ones that are drama, I'm like, yeah, it was good, and the ones that are comedy, I have like 10 points of like this. So yeah, it was fun. It was a very fun watch. Overall, positive review. But yeah.
So, sometimes I think a movie like that, you can get by just on being strange to fill in some of the comic gaps. Because I think the weird part of the brain and the comedy part of the brain are very closely connected.
Sure, yeah.
I was wondering how the songs went over because I sometimes wonder something made in a foreign language, how songs are going to play for an English-speaking audience. Something like The Lure was in Polish, and I think it worked pretty well, but usually we don't watch musicals made in foreign languages. But what do you guys think of the music itself?
Okay, if you want me to go for yeah, no, it's a very valid point, and I think you lose some of the joke, just as if I were to tell you a joke in Polish or another language. The delivery, the way it's being said, the intent behind the words is lost when you have to read it on a subtitle. And at least for me, I was trying to find the balance of what my ear was hearing and then focusing my eyes on the words and connecting it. And I think the one that stands out is there's a song that the main serial killer sings, and that one has actually been in my head a little bit the past few
Was
days.
it the Tapa Tapa Tapa?
Yeah. But that's the only that one, and then there's one where the two protagonists are like singing to each other in two separate locations. Those two stand out to me. The rest was pretty forgettable music-wise, I would say.
Any thoughts, Giles?
Oh, yeah, no, that's very accurate reflection. I know the director guy did the subtitles himself among the everything else he did for the movie, and one reason I wanted to defer to Jacob there is I have this difficulty here at Fantasia, especially with my reviewer buddies. They will exit a movie. They'll say, "Hey, what did you think?" And I almost always like a movie, or I almost always like something about it enough that that's what I remember. And these virtually everyone else I speak with, I'll say, are a lot more discerning. And so I look like this weird overactive kid who's like, "Yeah, we just saw a movie." And like, it's like, "Oh, sorry. I'll try to keep my happiness in check for you." But,
You can't apologize for being a ray of sunbeam, man. We need those.
I've just about given up on that. Yeah. But that's why I like talking with Jacob, because he's also generally just much more of an enthusiast and not coming to this from a film critic.
Yeah, Jake, the vampire zombies. Now, I just wanted to know one thing, because vampires are known to drink blood, and then zombies are known to eat brains. So a vampire zombie, is he just going to suck the blood out of the brain itself, or? And also, does it matter if you were a vampire first and then got turned into a zombie, or a zombie first and then got turned into a vampire?
Yeah, what biology went into this?
Yeah. So there is a lore. It's all it was all thought out. So it's like it's like this. Our whole thing is like we like to take a really dumb bad idea and then make it like what we consider good. Like we like to then really think it out. And
Right.
so it's like this. The Dracula took into space. This is like backstory that isn't in the movie. Dracula and all the vampires were being chased away, stabbed in the heart, garlic, all that stuff. They went to space. For years, they've gone to space. Dracula decided he was kind of like a rebel leader. Again, this isn't in the movie. This is all just my own backstory. He went down to Earth and tried to like kind of reclaim some of Earth. It failed really badly. 10 years later is when our story takes place, where he now has a new plan. So the vampires are all in space. They're their own kind of race. They have abducted a person whom they have bitten and turned into a vampire and fused together the zombie gene, that is a thing they've created, with the vampire, sent that vampire back down to Earth to infect people. So there's vampires, and then there's vampire zombies who are attacked by the vampire zombies. I know it'll make more sense when you see the movie, but
oh yeah,
no, it's perfect. Yeah. We're right there.
There's a lot of lore.
If you're bitten by a vampire zombie, do you turn into a vampire, a zombie, or another vampire zombie?
Another vampire zombie. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the vampires are like trying to create their own like subservient race of vampire zombies out of the humans and reclaim Earth as their own.
What happens if a werewolf bites a vampire zombie?
I'm sure they're working on a
maybe that's a sequel. Yeah.
That's a sequel. Okay. All right. Yeah. Right.
We actually
werewolves in space.
We actually were joking that if there was a sequel, we either want to call it again with the vampire zombies from space, or there can't possibly be more vampire zombies from space.
But of
Yeah,
course there is.
yeah,
Well, no, or in this case, it could be werewolves meet the vampire zombies
yeah.
from space, or
There you
the
go.
space werewolves,
Yeah,
and then do that separately, and then tie them together for as part of a trilogy.
yeah.
I'd like to pitch Vampire Zombies Go Hawaiian.
Oh, perfect. That could be number four. That'll be phase two of the vampire zombie
That's right.
cinema.
When the series is, we
Yeah,
know the series has run its course, and it's just
yeah,
scraping around from free money at that point. Yeah, the
yeah.
fourth movie is it. Yep, good. We got an arc here for you, Jake.
And you did say this was influenced by Ed Wood, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, massively. Ed Wood and Mel Brooks are the two biggest influences on this project for sure. I'm a huge Mel Brooks fan, and that's kind of the reason I got into filmmaking was seeing those movies at a young age. Um, so yeah, the whole trope of like campy 50s horror, which I used to watch with my dad when I was young, was a great, I think, shell, and there's enough obvious stuff there to poke fun at, and then we kind of injected our own brand of comedy and stuff into that mold. So that acted as a really solid framework because all of those movies pretty much follow the same beats. So it was a fun, like, production design backdrop to set everything against. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can use for jokes and then inject our own original story into. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun making it and writing it.
Sounds like something you'd find at Fantasia. Yeah.
Yeah, we were hoping, but yeah, it wasn't quite ready, and we submitted like a very rough cut, and understandably so, we didn't get in. It wasn't done, so makes sense. But yeah, we were targeting other genre festivals, so we'll see what happens. Very excited. We have a couple fun cult cameos as well. We have Judith O'Dea, who's Barbara from Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, she's in there. Lloyd Kaufman from Trauma, he's in there. And if you're familiar with Tim and Eric, who are like these cult comedy guys,
Yeah.
there's this wild puppeteer guy who's on their show, and he makes a little appearance as well. So we dug deep,
wow.
got some fun cult cameos in there.
Did you just call Tim and Eric old comedy guys? Man, I feel old now.
Oh, did I say old or alt comedy? I don't know.
Oh,
Well, I think it's an alt.
Might have said alt comedy guys.
Like,
They
wow,
are
they're
getting old
old.
now. I think they're getting up there.
Time waits for no man or
Yeah.
comedian.
Well, let's see. Anything else from Fantasia you want to highlight that you've seen that people maybe should check out? Or is that it? Giles, I
Oh,
know, has done 4 movies, I think, posted reviews of, no, 3 movies
three movies.
forthcoming.
Yeah.
Have you touched on the Paragon, Giles? Did you see that one?
Oh yeah, I saw the Paragon. Yep, and I mentioned that that I felt was a really fun movie. Um, Beautifully written and a great platonic relationship dominating the story, which I mentioned in a little blurb thing that I wrote since I need to think it's shall we say a certifiably weird movie to give the full treatment, but I do mention it and I mention it kindly. Paragon was a delight.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. It had like a $25,000 budget, and it shows, but you don't mind because you're having so much fun and you're along for the ride, and they're very inventive and creative with how they did it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well. Thought it was cool.
Yeah, nice little character-driven comedy kind of thing that had its special effects that, considering the vibe of the whole thing with the she's a master psychic and she has an evil brother and they had a father who was pursuing this um, this shiny rock of ultimate power. And so it's the cheesiness of the effects lines up very nicely with the cheesiness of the frame, but it's all filled in with this great character development and interactions, primarily between has been very pseudo tennis champ guy loser and the amusingly mysterious psychic woman and their pursuit together. So a buddy picture with some great B movie horror effects and themes there. And what about anything else, Jacob, that comes to your mind? Did you?
Well, there was I saw Frankie Frico last night, which I think your audiences would definitely like. Did you see that one, Giles? Or...
Yes, I did. I managed to sneak in because I was right on the heels of another another screening across the way, and I dove across, and I guess was got one of the last seats that at least one of the last seats that was comfortable to actually watch the screen, because that big theater, there are some spots where it can be painful, but this was good. So I saw that, and that was a great throwback kind of thing.
Yeah, the director was saying, so it's Steve Kostansky who did Psycho Gorman and Manborg. And he was saying it was inspired by Ghoulies Go to College, which is I think the third Ghoulies movie. And it's basically these little it's like a little monster movie, which were hugely popular in the 80s. There's, Gremlins and things like that. And yeah, super fun, super entertaining, very creative. Steve made all the, what would you call them? They're like little puppet
Dolls or puppets, yeah.
dolls, yeah. Yeah, so he made all those. He wrote it, he directed it, edited everything, and made it no less in between a couple of movies. So it was, yeah, I thought it was great for exactly what it was. It was
Oh
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Did you catch Mononoke,
No,
Jacob? Oh, okay.
I heard it was good though. No, I hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Is there a buzz movie there this year? Like the year I was there, Train to Busan, everybody was talking about, you know, everybody's talking about it.
That's a
Blu-ray
good
was also there.
question.
The one I've heard the most anticipation about and kind of most about since was Shelby Oaks.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if you touched on that one already or if you guys are familiar.
Uh, I didn't watch it, but I've heard some of why there's buzz for it. There's the
Yeah.
people involved, and then there's the fact that it screened at all. I heard became something controversial, or at least something annoying on the part of the distributors.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll when I talk about it, I won't give any spoilers away, but yeah, so the movie uh was acquired by Neon and is going to be distributed, so that was a big thing, and I think because of that, they potentially didn't want to screen it at any festivals or wanted to pull it from screenings or something. Um, there's a fantastic uh twist, let's say, that happens. That's great. It's really, really great, and it really works. The first 30 minutes of the movie is great. And then it's almost as if there are three totally different movies that each would have been great on their own as a full-length feature, uh, all kind of crammed together. And just when you kind of settle into like, oh, this is the movie, it changes, and not in a way that feels clever or warranted, but just like, oh, this is not what I thought I was watching. And it does that like four times. Um, so it was like very anticipated, and yeah, I would watch it again still. Like I think it definitely deserves a second viewing, but yeah, it was interesting how many ideas were kind of crammed into one feature. I would say to its detriment, actually.
Okay. Let me ask, I think we have about 5 minutes, so maybe time for like two more questions for Jacob. Do you have a question, Pete?
Oh no, this is five. Sorry.
Okay. I thought since horror comedies are kind of your bag, what are the best? What do you recommend? What are the classics?
That's a really good question. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is fantastic. Really great movie. Um, hmm. Dead Snow is a really good one. Uh, like Nazi zombies, basically. Very fun. I would say the original Evil Dead is actually a horror comedy. It's pretty cheesy. I know it's not intentional, but Poultrygeist by Lloyd Kaufman, really fun movie.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah, yeah. Those are the ones I'd say offhand anyway, without uh, doing a deep dive into my brain.
You chose the original Evil Dead over Evil Dead 2?
That's true. Evil. Yeah, you know what? Okay, I'll switch it. That's fair.
I
Um,
I was kind of expecting you to say Young Frankenstein since you mentioned Mel
Oh
Brooks.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
That may be
That's
even
but
too.
that what I would say is like a straight up comedy. Like that's more, and that's more what ours is too. Like I said, Mel Brooks was my biggest influence probably as a aspiring filmmaker.
Yeah, I'd be really, I mean, I understand, yeah, Young Frankenstein certainly lampoons horror movies, but I would be very hard pressed to describe it as a horror comedy as opposed to, yeah, as Jacob said, a comedy. But still worth mentioning. Black and white monster, of course, danger.
Yeah.
I tend to like ones like I like a lot of the ones that go more towards the horror with a little bit of comedy. So I think of things like this is when I, grew up in the 80s. I tend to think of things like Return of the Living Dead and Reanimator and Frankenhooker when I think of horror comedies that do it for me. But that's partially, from my age.
No, those are all great as well. Reanimator is fantastic. Gremlins, I mean, I don't know if you would call that one quite a horror, but it's kind of got that vibe as well. Yeah, the 80s were a good time.
Yeah, it's got comedy too. I think it's it's a good balance, comedy and horror. That's right.
Giles, do you want to ask that final question?
Oh, I would love to, because I was trying to think of a way to wrap this up. Jakob Skrzypa, it's been great for you chatting with us here on the podcast. I'll, of course, run into you plenty more times in the near future. We got a minute and a half left, and as our guest, I would like to ask you, what's your hometown, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
Okay. So the city nearest me is Windsor, so that would be Windsor, Ontario. My hometown is actually Essex, Ontario, which no one's heard of, but we have great pizza in Essex, actually. So I would say Chachi's Pizza in Essex, Ontario. If you ever find yourself there, it's really good.
All right. That was fast, and Giles wrote it down because he's planning on being in Windsor, Ontario very soon, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, Windsor.
Nuts to Windsor. I'm going straight to Essex.
Okay, there we go.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much for being with us, Jakob Skrzypa, Giles Edwards, Pete Turbovich, and I'm Greg. And we'll be signing off and seeing you next week. Oh, and next week we will also have a guest, Nina Martin, who is a academic and an author. So give us a little class around this joint.
Yeah. We'll smarten ourselves up, won't we?
Yeah, talk about movies, the same dumb movies that we've been talking about, but on a much higher plane. So
it'll
that's
be
next week. Thanks, guys. See y'all later.
Thanks for having me.